her presentation to us, I quickly responded and said, well, you said pretty much everything that I was going to say. Everything that she said that you should do, and everything that she said you shouldn't do. Not surprisingly, she works for them, of course. Before I launch into this, because I'm going to say some things which are not entirely favorable of Google, although not entirely critical either, I do want to point out that Darcy is incredibly helpful when issues come up. Recently, they've started releasing these sort of snippets of Google how-to called Scholar Notes for Publishers, is that it? And those have been very helpful. They've certainly allowed publishers and vendors like us to understand better what the scope of Google's policies are. And that page that Darcy referred to does exist, and it has existed for some time. So just out of curiosity, how many in the audience are publishers? And if you could just drop your hand if you've never been, keep it up if you're a publisher, and how many of you have been dropped from Google at one point or another? Just keep your hand up. All right, so, and I'm sure that you've heard most of these things before, and my point is that sometimes it's a little bit harder to put it into practice than it might appear. So, optimization for Google search, or how not to get dropped, which is really what everyone is most concerned about. You know who Atypon is. We're a platform provider like Highwire, like Publishing Technology, like Silverchair. And these are a couple of our recent client editions. And just to give you an idea of the Literatum platform, our platform by the numbers, it's pretty big. It's the largest by volume of all the other platforms combined, actually. So about 12.5 million journal articles as of right now, 50,000 ebooks, and a lot of mobile activity as well. And one of the important things for us is that the Literatum platform came after the Highwire platform, it came after the Ingenta platform, it came after the MetaPress platform. So almost all of those 12.5 million articles have been migrated to the Literatum platform. Very few of them began life on the Literatum platform. So we have a whole lot of experience migrating websites and handling all of the issues that Darcy just talked about. And this panel is about transition specifically, and I am going to speak to that, but only on one slide, because I think the transition is sort of the easy part, and also Darcy has covered a lot of it. What becomes more complicated is that you launch this website, and the transition is a big effort, but it is a one-time effort. And after that, you still have to run the website, you still need to be indexed in Google, you still need to be in compliance with all of their policies. And in our experience, that's when things go wrong most of the time. It's not during the migration, but a year later, a year and a half later, when all of a sudden you find out that there's a problem. So I'm going to talk about ways that you can avoid that happening, but I do want to talk about transition first. And our approach to transition, in addition to everything that Darcy said, is really very simple. First thing that we do is we ask the client who's going to be migrating over for a full month of weblogs from their current site. All right, so send us everything that happened on your site in April of 2012, the raw weblogs, whatever format they happen to be in. And we have a tool that we developed, which all of these requests, and for an entire month, a sizable site, that's going to be tens of millions of requests. And the tool extracts all of the URI patterns. A URI is a URL, but without the HTTP. Basically everything after the domain is what we look for. And we batch those up. So we say, well, all of the article URLs look like this. So /article/ and then the DOI, for example. All of the table of contents pages look like this. We find all of those patterns, and generally there are 10 big ones, 10 that cover 99% of all of the requests, and then hundreds of other smaller ones. And we implement redirects for all of those patterns. So if our article URL is /DOI/ and then the DOI, and the old one was /article/ and then the DOI, we match those up. Okay. Then what we do is we use another tool that we've custom developed to take all of those logs and replay them, basically make those same requests against the new website, the completed, developed new website before it's launched. And what happens is that most of those requests will succeed. They'll result in a 200 level HTTP code, which means the request was successful. And some of them won't succeed. And the tool flags the requests that didn't succeed, the ones that resulted in a 404 for the most part, which is not found. The new website couldn't resolve this request. And we fix them. So we go back and look at all of these failures, and typically we've missed a couple patterns, or there are some ad hoc URLs that we didn't handle. Sometimes this points out that publishers haven't uploaded some of their content to the site. So they've migrated 99% of their issues, but for whatever reason, a couple issues didn't make it over. So this helps us to flag a lot of the errors. And then we rinse and repeat, and we'll typically do this 2 or 3 times. Now, the reason that this has been so effective for us is that if someone has not requested this URL in the last month, the chances are really good that no one is going to miss it. Okay? And for larger websites, or for websites that are, for larger websites meaning there's more breadth, or for smaller websites meaning there might not be as much traffic, we'll sometimes go even farther back than 1 month. One time we actually went through an entire year's worth of weblogs and looked at every single request that came in for that entire year. So we found that this is a very effective way to make sure that we're capturing every single URL on the old site and redirecting it successfully to the right URL on the new site. And there's a bonus involved here, which is that you can use this exact same methodology to achieve real-world performance testing of the new site, which is also very important. Because what you're doing is you're taking real-world behavior. You're not saying, well, I'm going to test the performance of my new site by assuming that the average user is going to come in, do a search, then look at an article, and then leave. You have real-world variability and real-world patterns of how this website is going to be used. And so what we do is we take that full month of usage and we compress it down into, for example, 4 days. And we put the entire load of 1 month of the old site onto the new site over a period of 4 days. That gives you a real-world and very high-level performance test. So we're able to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. And that's how we handle transition. And that's really all that I'm going to say about transition. So what I've found, and again, what Darcy and Google have put together in the last few months with the notes for publishers and with being more accessible, and there was a time when Darcy left Google for a period, and that was a very challenging period because Google's like a giant organization, 10,000, 15,000 employees, something ridiculous. Is it 30,000 employees? How many people have you met that work for Google aside from Darcy? It's kind of hard to find someone, right? So that's been very helpful. But what we have found is that even though most of the time Google describes their policies in language that's clear to us, it may not be clear to everyone else. And so what we did was we took those notes for publishers and everything else that we had gleaned from years of working with Darcy and Anurag and put together what we call a Google Compliance Guide. And the following slides are basically a presentation of that guide. So this is Google's typical policy. And some of this is going to be simply restating what Darcy said previously. Google indexes only what is fully accessible to every Google user, no exceptions. And if there are restrictions placed on viewing a particular web page, Google will not index the page. It's really that simple. So if you have a subscription-only site, Google won't index it. But they make an exception for scholarly articles. As Darcy said, Google will index the full text of scholarly articles if and only if every Google user clicking on a scholarly article search result directly and immediately sees, at a minimum, the complete author-written abstract or a readable image of the first full page of text. How many of you think that you know what this means? Unambiguously. Okay. So let's scholarly articles seems clear enough. Directly and immediately, it seems clear enough. Complete author-written abstract seems clear enough. In our experience, again, and Darcy's working with a lot of other vendors and publishers, so she may be seeing other things, and you'll hear from Louise soon. But the interpretation of these 3 things, which seem so simple, often lead to the most problems. So let's look at the first one, scholarly articles. And this has caused a fair bit of contention among our clients because it's difficult for people to agree on what is a scholarly article and what is not a scholarly article. This is obviously not a comprehensive list, but it gives you an idea, and Google has seen this. So this is their stamp of approval. Research articles, clearly scholarly. Review articles, clearly scholarly. Case reports, same thing. But editorials, letters, news, doesn't matter what your editors think, doesn't matter what you think, doesn't matter what your sales and marketing team would like to think. Google does not consider articles of this type to be scholarly. what that means is that they fall outside of that special exclusion that Darcy told you about and that I just told you about. So I'll get onto that in a minute. Directly and immediately, this is fairly straightforward. You can't put the user through an interstitial page. You can't require them to register first. You can't put a layer over the page. That's fairly straightforward. But complete author-written abstract, this is absolutely where our clients get tripped up the most. And there are a couple reasons for that. The first is that despite complete author-written abstract being fairly clear to me, it isn't always fairly clear to them. And it's partly because a lot of this content goes way back. Most of our clients have digitized back to volume 1, issue 1. And when there weren't abstracts, for example, a lot of them took the shortcut and tagged the first 100 words of the article, for example, as if it were the abstract. And they didn't put in their metadata any distinction between something which was tagged as an abstract and was actually an abstract versus something which was tagged as an abstract and was really a substitute for an abstract. So it's difficult to find all of that because, your content isn't making any distinction. You need to sort of make a rule. We know that we digitized content starting on this date, and so we're going to assume that everything before that, even if it has an abstract, it isn't actually an abstract. So complete author-written abstract, it has to be written by the author and complete. So for example, not just the first 100 words of the article. Specifically, and Darcy emphasized this, and I'll emphasize it too, because this has tripped up a number of our clients, it cannot be an extract. It can't be the first 100 words of the author-written abstract. It also cannot be an expert-written but not author-written summary. Now, we can debate all we want the value of the abstract versus the first page image and what will actually give the user the best understanding of what the article is about. If you want to be in Google's index, you have to play by their rules, and their rules are expert-written but not author-written abstracts. Summaries do not count as an acceptable free preview. So, what happens if you do not comply with these policies? Certain death. What I would like to know is where this photo was taken. Northern Colorado. In all seriousness, though, Google performs these automated checks. They pick some random URLs from your website that are in the index, and then they look at them. And if they don't comply with these guidelines, and I think it's fair to say that because humans are making this decision at the end of the day, it is from time to time subjective and maybe a little arbitrary, Google will remove the entirety of your website from their search index for up to 9 months. Their words, not mine. In their defense, it usually takes considerably less time than that to resolve a problem. But what I want to impress on you is that if they pick the one article in your entire corpus that is not in compliance with their policy, they will remove the entire website. Sometimes they contact you and say, we found this, can you fix it? I would say most of the time that happens, but sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes that message gets lost. And as Darcy said, you basically go into a queue, and sometimes it can take a long time to fix the problem. So what do we do to help publishers stay safe, basically? Our goals are clear guidelines. We have this document, which I like to think is easy to read and easy to understand, and it's easy to take action on, which is very important. We want to help our clients maximize discovery. The easiest way not to get dropped from the Google index is to not let them index the full text at all. Just let them index the abstract. What that means is that if an author types in his or her name or the title, they'll be able to find the result, but if they enter in a key word that appears in the full text but not the abstract, their article is not going to come up. So clearly you want to allow Google to index the full text. But we absolutely want to minimize the risk because about 50% of publishers' traffic across the board comes from Google, and you don't want to turn off that massive amount of traffic. So there's a program that Google has that Darcy didn't mention called First Click Free. And First Click Free actually came out of Google News. Google newspaper publishers, magazine publishers, they have the same challenge that scholarly publishers have, which is that they would like to be charging for their content. So the Wall Street Journal would like for you to have a subscription. But they want people to find the content through Google search products. And Google developed this program called First Click Free, which basically says, we'll index the full text, but you have to give the user free access if they click through the link under First Click Free. All right, so they'll index the full text, even if an acceptable free preview, which is that complete author-written abstract or readable first-page image, is not available, and even if the article is not scholarly, but you need to give Google users these first clicks free, up to 5 per day. All right, and this is something that our platform Literatum is supporting in the release that's going out in early July. And this is a table that shows you, based on Google's policies and based on the sort of out-of-the-box configuration of our platform, which clients can change on their own, what Google will be able to index. Right? So publishers can choose whether or not they want to participate in first click free. You need to make a sort of financial decision. Are you going to be giving away too much revenue if users have first clicks free to editorials, for example? But basically, if there's an acceptable free preview and it's a scholarly article, then Google is going to index the full text. If there is not an acceptable free preview, then only if you are participating in first click free will Google index the full text. Otherwise, our platform is only going to let Google index the abstract. Right? So it's going to keep you away from that situation where a non-scholarly article floats into the scholarly model. And for non-scholarly articles, it's much simpler. It doesn't matter if there's an acceptable free preview or not. The only thing that matters is, are you participating in first click free? And if you're not, then we only let Google index the preview, which is typically the abstract or the first page image. Right. Now, all of this is tunable by the client. Obviously, since first click free is being released in a couple weeks, we don't have any clients using it yet. My sense is that about half of our clients will choose to use it for some of their non-scholarly articles. Letters tend to be less valuable than editorials, for example. So I don't anticipate a lot of clients giving away first clicks free to editorials. But letters, you might want to do. So in summary, and I've kept this quick because there's only so much about Google that I can listen to. Every article can be indexed. That's our goal. You don't want an author to type in the title of their article and not find it. It's better to let Google index the abstract and the first page image than nothing. Right? But you also want to stay out of that danger zone. The behavior is configurable. I think that's very important because interpretations of what is scholarly and not varies, and you can actually have a conversation with Google on a case-by-case basis. We have this new type of article, and we think it's scholarly. What do you think? You can get agreement with them on that, and then you can tune the system. And you can configure whether or not you're participating in first click free. And the system, if used correctly, basically guarantees compliance. Right? So if you put the right information into the system, meaning you tell the system what is an abstract and what is not really an abstract, and if you tell the system what is a scholarly article and what is not a scholarly article, it will do the right thing by Google. It will make sure that you don't trip yourself up. The asterisk is that sometimes you have situations like the old content where you have a non-abstract tagged as an abstract. And those are the things that we help publishers go through when they're first migrating over to the site or when they're adding back file. We say, well, do you have problems like this? Do you have extracts that are masquerading as abstracts in your back file? And we can configure the behavior to take care of that as well. So that's what we do. And I'll also put these slides up on our website if you want to take a look at them. Thank you.